Good morning, and here I am with a review for We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor. So, first of all, I've got to say, Anna, you were right. I read it, I loved it. It was just as enjoyable, just as fun as you said it was going to be, and I'm very grateful that you loaned me my real copies. So I've been hearing about the Bobbyverse from a number of people for a long time. And I hadn't read it before because I think when it first appeared, it didn't exist in book form, in paper book form. It was e-reading or audio only, or anyway, it wasn't books. And I'm mostly about the books, as a quick glance behind me will tell you. But when I finally got to it, I did thoroughly enjoy it. I feel very much that this is a book written by a geek for geeks, because we start off with the character of Bob, and Bob Johansson has just sold off his software company and he has a lot of money. With this money, a couple of the first two things he does is he buys VIP tickets for a convention. Okay, hands up. Who is a geek who has never been to a convention? I can't see any hands out there. So hands up people who have been to a convention. Ta-da! I don't do them very often anymore, but back in the day, I went to Star Trek conventions, I went to Comic-Con, I went to Supernova. They were like the religious holidays on my calendar. I had some great times and I built some great memories. Bob Johansson has booked a VIP ticket so he can get in to watch all the panels that he really wanted to see right from the front. And as a profound geek and software expert, one of the things that he's interested in is a type of probe, which me, as a non-computer person and a non-computer geek, didn't really understand. It's a type of probe. Where is it? Well, it's a type of probe that, well, at this point of his selling the software company, is science fiction, and a panel called Exploring the Galaxy, and another one designing, there we go, von Neumann probe. So these are the panels that interested Bob, and he went and saw them. The other thing he did, or actually the thing he did before that, is go to a company called Cryo Eterna and arrange to have his head cryogenically frozen when he died, in light of the future being resurrected. Because he's an atheist, he doesn't believe in life after death. He wants to be frozen and come back as a second person. It starts off with a whole fun repertoire about he knows how it works and he's already set up the trust before he signs that will allow the money to go into it. But basically you cut off the head and you freeze the head, and the rest of the body isn't necessary. And they are referred to in the books occasionally as corpuscles. I've heard them referred to as that elsewhere. So anyway, that's Bob. He's living his best life. He has now got a lot of money. He's doing his fully geek thing. He's going to the conventions and smiling at all the Darth Vaders and the Chewbaccas walking down the street with him. He has a great time, and then he's hit by a car. No spoilers. I'm pretty sure that anyone who picks up this book and reads the back is going to know this. He wakes up a century later, and because he is essentially a science geek and a software producer, and because this is what he was aiming for, he wakes up and he slowly realizes that he doesn't actually have a physical body. And then he gets talked through the process that he's an AI basically in a box. He's been brought back to life by the government, which is called Faith, because in the century that he's been frozen, reality and society have completely changed, and now the United States of America, a fundamentalist organization, where all the money and property of the people who are legally dead has been taken away from them, and so any cryogenically frozen people are considered abominations and property of the state. Most of them have been killed. A few, like Bob, are resurrected with the aim of powering certain units that can't be powered with other technology. I also don't think that it's a huge spoiler to say that Bob eventually realizes that it's his science geek capacity that's going to get him somewhere, and he finally realizes that he has been resurrected to go in a von Neumann probe, just like he was seeing at the convention. And there's spoilers through, there's Easter eggs throughout the early part, so this isn't a surprise. And go off and explore the galaxy. A few of the other things about this book that make this possible are 3D replicators, where you can basically replicate anything once you're out there, and there's a whole heap of other technology that will allow Bob to replicate himself once he reaches a place with enough metals and resources. Hence the "we are Legion, we are Bob," because at a certain point Bob starts making more Bobs. It's a great book. There's quite a bit of science. It might not be the hardest of hard science. You can follow it along. I can follow it along, and I don't have strong hard science credential. I'm more biology based. There's a lot of cosmology. It's a perfect company to Heliconia because something is always happening. Events are happening throughout, but you still have a lot of cosmology and astronomy as the mix. So the faith government isn't the only one that sent out probes. The entire socio-political structure of Earth has changed, but there's basic blocks, which is there's an Asian Chinese type block, there's a very strong Brazilian block, there's a strong, not so strong European block. The entire Middle East has been wiped out by nuclear warfare. It's an interesting different topography, and so once Bob gets into space and starts making other Bobs, they encounter other probes that have been sent out. As each Bob is made, they find slightly different characteristics and give themselves slightly different names, but they also develop their VR, so they can basically live in a VR style universe that's the inside their ship, and that stops them from going crazy because they keep improving their subroutines so they actually feel like they're scratching their chin, they're looking around, they're drinking a cup of coffee. It feels real. And an interesting part of the book is that each one chooses his VR to reflect his personal interests, and each one chooses a name. So there is a lot of geek in here. There is Star Trek geek, there's a bit of Star Wars geek, Galaxy Quest is mentioned, Farscape is definitely mentioned, Bob and Ernie, The Simpsons. If you can geek it, it's basically been geeked by Dennis E. Taylor, and he's put it somewhere in this very, very fun book. I have been told it's a fast read. I did not find it a fast read. I found the jumping around from one Bob to another, which is what you do a lot of, slowed me down. I don't find that fast reading. It's enjoyable reading, but it's not fast. And there's enough actual cosmology, science, scene building in here that far from a fast book. At 295 pages, it took me a few days, but I was working pretty heavy hours at the same time. So yes, thoroughly enjoyed We Are Legion, We Are Bob. I'm undecided as to whether I should go straight on to the next one or take a break in between, because while it's immense fun, I think that I probably need breaks with this. So you've got a few story arcs that finish by the end of the book, and one of them involves Bob's going back to Earth to see how humankind are doing, and it turns out there's been nuclear warfare, they're not doing too well. So one of the Bobs arranges for spaceships to be built to colonize other planets, while other Bobs explore other planets. A lot of what the other Bobs do is they go out into space and they explore planets and systems, and one of them actually finds an intelligent life form that's evolved quite different from humanity, but on a different planet, and that's the original Bob that gets involved in their story. That's an excellent story. I love it. There is a very eerie and creepy encounter with something that must be an alien mind. That I think is going to. I think all the main plots, humanity in general, the Delta, is it Delta? secondary intelligent species that they find, the potential alien species. I think all of these are plots that are going to go forward in further books. But they do come to a bit of a story arc stop by the end of this book, so it hasn't annoyed me by forcing me to read the next book, which I have, before getting a sense of completion from this book. Yes, so thoroughly recommend, written by geeks, for geeks. It's fun to read. I don't remember any references to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in this, but in some ways there's an insouciance to the writing, there's a light-heartedness, there's a ability to not take things too seriously while taking them just seriously enough to make them real. That is very reminiscent, to my mind, Douglas Adams and his writing style and some of his stories. I still think Douglas Adams was best heard as an audiobook. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was originally thought of as a radio play, and that's still my favourite manifestation. But the overall feeling that you get from Douglas Adams, I would say, is very reminiscent with Dennis E. Taylor, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you, Anna, for loaning me these books, without which I would probably never have read them, because there's too many books out there. But there aren't very many books exactly like this. This is pretty unique. So go out, read good books, tell me what you thought of this one if you read it, and I will see you again sometime.